Good day, dear viewers, and welcome again to our series Visite today. And I would like to immediately answer an email that I received from Suzanne. Suzanne has been suffering from depression for 14 years and she takes venlafaxine. Venlafaxine is a serotonin uptake inhibitor. And she wrote to me that she has always tried to discontinue this antidepressant, but then always ended up in depression and therefore actually kept taking it. She's currently with a naturopath, and there they examined both blood and various stool parameters. I have increased inflammation values in the stool. I have parasites in my stool, and my secretory IgA, which is mucosal immunity, is too low. She plans to discharge various heavy metals with me and prescribed various nutritional supplements. Since I'm always in a phase of depression, and I was even able to slowly reduce to 37.5 milligrams, with the hope of discontinuing it, it didn't work out. And I have been taking venlafaxine again, 75 milligrams for 4 weeks. 6 weeks ago, I was able to start on the lowest dose. That's actually always been my maintenance dose, but I'm surprised that I can no longer cope with this low dose. I need this increased dose. My question is, I'm taking the 75 milligrams now, and mentally I can't really get out of my low again. And I'm just afraid that maybe my supplements can block the effects. And you were so nice, Suzanne, and then gave me this list as well. Maybe you can give me an opinion how I can handle this. The intestinal cure, finally, I haven't started yet. And I can also send you further findings. Interesting. We're very quick today that when we speak of depression and also diagnose depression, that actually resorting to antidepressant therapy is there very quickly. And actually it's surprising, but that can, of course, also have a positive effect on the whole thing. There's no question about it. It is a symptomatic therapy. This drug was approved as early as 1987 to 1999. So there are a number of incredible scientific studies in America, everywhere, of this psychotropic drug. But it has been found 1.5 to 2 years ago, actually a large placebo effect takes place. That is 68 to 90 or 89% of people do not have a real honest pharmacological effect anymore, and still they take it. And still maybe if they don't take it, the depression will return. And that causes a lot of people to take the antidepressant again and again. Venlafaxine was actually only approved for moderate and very severe depression. It is metabolized in the liver, so broken down, then excreted, and 2 days after ingestion, actually 87% of the antidepressant is then eliminated. I'm not the one prescribing antidepressants. You never say never. It can happen that you have to build a bridge with it. But I actually went deeper into pharmacology. You only need to enter venlafaxine package insert. Then you can print out what you actually find in the small. I always say the wash slip in the medicine packet. And that's the icing on the cake. So you just have to know that these are not side effects, but the effects listed here comprise almost 3 DIN A4 pages. So you also need to know the drug itself creates a series of imbalances in your body. And that's going in a direction of seizures and increase in depression, of a tendency to fractures, tendency to mania, hyponatremia in the metabolism. There are a number of others: aggression, sleep disturbance, sexual dysfunction, dry mouth, abnormal bleeding, tendency to glaucoma. I don't want to expand on this at all right now and say it can be a good temporary rescue medication, but it is not responsible for my terms to hold on to a drug for 14 years with an unbelievable level of side effects for my organism. And of course, the question arises when I stop taking a medication and I notice the depression coming back. If I take a blood pressure medicine and feel I stop taking it and the blood pressure is high, then you're not in the process of treating the cause of that blood pressure or depression. Far from it. And in this phase comes the naturopath who makes the effort and who is also there and tries to understand things, which of course also result in depression, such as a chronic latent inflammation or a folic acid deficiency, that is vitamin B9. That this is included in your medications that you take as a dietary supplement as well. But it would just be important now, this vitamin B9, which is folic acid, really needs to be measured. How high is my level of folic acid? And maybe it's much, much better not just to measure the level, its approximate 3.5 nanograms per milliliter in the serum, but maybe it's even better also to measure homocysteine on an empty stomach, because homocysteine is an incredibly important amino acid, a protein which is further metabolized within the detoxification metabolism, within the protein metabolism. But having a high homocysteine level would mean something is wrong with my folic acid and vitamin B12 and B6 metabolism. On the other hand, a lack of folic acid can of course occur in the metabolism. In this methylation, it's called, in these methylation reactions which take place at the cellular level, and without this high quality of methylation also in regards to detoxification, actually a healthy cell metabolism can no longer take place at all, and a folic acid deficiency leads to reduced methylation and has an important symptom, which is depression. This means that a so-called neurotoxic homocysteine level increases, which is not only toxic for the nerves, but is also toxic to blood circulation. So an important parameter for maintaining a good vascular situation is homocysteine. That can bring you further to get you to the root of your depression. I'm a bit worried that a lot of things in you have still been triggered, and in the end, of course, the picture of depression becomes clear to you, but that you really try and learn bit by bit to understand that your body needs a lot of help, and the depression nowadays usually leaves no room at all, because very quickly an antidepressant is used. Very quickly the psychiatric colleague is then consulted, and their concept is just playing with psychotropic drugs, regardless of any questions, what is actually the reason of my depression? And if you know the context between vitamin D deficiency and the development of depression, then you need to know, is your vitamin D imbalanced at all? The connection between a toxic load and a development to mental illness, amalgam and heavy metals, a big topic. The viewers of this Visite series know that the advice of a doctor who thinks holistically is important to you. And you have long been aware that we live in a world today in which we cannot sit in a glass box, but we must care for our body, which is, from an evolutionary point of view, unable to detoxify 60,000 toxins daily. And of course, detoxification, or the possibility of detoxification, play an incredible role. What I always find really nice is when people fast. If you fast, then that is a great journey to yourself, and it is a very nice experience after fasting. I'm so happy, I'm so light. My head is incredibly free and clear and motivated. In other words, what chance do I give the body to loosen itself up just by fasting? To be detoxified, which in an everyday life where life revolves, where I only serve life, where of course I put a strain on my metabolism every day, but I also have to eat food. That's all right. But can it withstand this burden of life at all? And don't toxic loads also accumulate there? And they do something with us both on an immunological level and on a defense level, as well as at the cellular level. There are a number of depressions. These are called exhaustion depressions. So it would be the same for me if I noticed that I had no more energy for life. I can't do all this anymore. I don't know why I don't have the same strength today as I had 3 years ago. There is also a psychological change. You also have to look at it. Is there insulin resistance behind it? Is it mitochondriopathy? Is my cell energy metabolism in trouble? If you measure the Q10, that's the motor for the cell energy power plants, then I notice frightening things. Often organisms are completely undersupplied with Q10, but they should bring top performance. They should be physically fit, and on top of that, also mentally fit. That does not work. Q10 is such an incredible requirement, and the lab then gives such specific reference ranges and says below 0.67 or up to 0.67 is a good level. No, every day normal consumption needs to be more than 2.5. And the neurodegenerative, the mentally ill, Parkinson's patients need a value above 4, above 5. That means, how do we deal with it today? Who cares about Q10? Very often I hear that if you believe in it, you can take that. That is basis, that is knowledge about the basics of life in general. And that's why when I'm in a depression, I don't need an antidepressant first for my brain. I need brain nutrients. It is also said to be maritime nutrients. These are nerve vitamins, such as folic acid. Crucially, folic acid intervenes in a cell division processes. Folic acid is responsible for a number of biochemical reactions, for pregnant women in particular, where it is about a child, about forcing the development of an embryo. They need to substitute folic acid, make sure the folic acid is clear. And otherwise the children have spina bifida on the back, which means the back can no longer close. These are things that we neglect today, but there are a number of people who have a disorder in the folic acid receptor. Now the folic acid is still sufficient, but the folic acid receptor is not right, or the folic acid cannot be converted from inactive form to active form. And that's why I only work in the clinic with the active form. MTHFR, that means I just want to rule that out, the risk that people can't do this biochemical process, and give them active folic acid. But at the end of the day, these are questions to be pursued. Because if there is a disturbance in the folic acid metabolism, and now I come back to your venlafaxine, then of course the effect of the drug is not the same. Although I don't think that that might be the cause in your case, but it challenges you to look for more things for yourself now too. These maritime brain fatty acids are of course EPA and DHA. These are the omega-3 fatty acids we need, and of course within the framework of our whole so-called neurotransmitter metabolism for uptake by the CNS. When it comes to dopamine, our happiness hormone, and serotonin, from which melatonin is also formed so that we can sleep, that we are satisfied. These are all important things so that serotonin can dock to the receptor at all. It may be that you produce enough, but it cannot dock. Incidentally, serotonin is not produced in the brain at all. It is produced in the intestine. You briefly wrote me in the email that your naturopath has analysed these things so wonderfully, but that's the important thing. I think if you look at such an intestine and compare it to, I can still remember from before how analogous I found the gut and the brain. They do have a similar morphological picture, as well as the kidneys and the ears. And so are these references. That means we trigger inflammation at the intestinal level via the vagus to the brain. The blood-brain barrier can open. It triggers inflammation. It attacks receptors. That means for all those things you might have to get to the root and take care of the intestines very consistently. And you can do a stool test. And you can do a blood test. And you can go into this tryptophan metabolism from which serotonin is made. You can see whether the intestine still produces enough serotonin or whether it redirects to a kynurenine metabolism, for example, from the tryptophan. You can measure endotoxins in the blood, and endotoxins are actually fractions of bacteria that appear in the blood and therefore require a chronic recurring 24-hour retrieval of immune performance, because the gut no longer has a self-contained intestinal barrier. Leaky gut, permeability, a low mucosa like you have told me here with the secretory IgA is of course predestined because the mucous membrane lacks the immune capacity. These chronic latent inflammations are important that you recognise them and that you also treat them. And for that you need, of course, a lot of strength and mobilisation, and first of all, active ingredients that are not only taken as dietary supplements, but I would actually recommend that you first do a real high quality intestinal cleansing. And for me, the intestinal cleansing doesn't begin with the question, do I now take pro-Basan or pro-EM-San? But if the naturopath has already identified a load of parasites, then I would first make sure that my biofilm is removed. The company Vitalus has developed a very nice program to remove the biofilm, and after that would actually start eliminating the parasites from my gut as well. And if you perhaps know specifically which parasites, because it has been determined by bioresonance, then you can also get a targeted parasite program. If in the first instance a parasitic load has been perceived, but you are still not 100% sure which and what and why, I actually recommend people to do this once or twice a year. Do a parasite cleanse, and you do that after the full moon, because after the full moon and around the new moon is the greatest astral power for the body to steer outwards, to release, to transfer out. And we always recommend 14 days that you then reduce the diet to low sugar and low protein. And that one then relieves the body well with zeolite. And then Mimosa pudica as the big plant. That also reacts very strongly to all types of worms. We have a lot of experience with children actually taking the capsules morning and evening, before breakfast and before dinner. Just prepare this body for 14 days. That can be before the full moon. But when the full moon is there, then you should really take 3 capsules every 2 or 3 hours on a day, like intensive detox days. Actually, maybe just 1 day, maybe 2 days. And if you can, 3 days. But that day, I would mainly just really drink and let the body do its thing, to be able to carry out its anti-parasitic effect now. Garlic enemas are to be performed every month. 8 to 10 garlic cloves peeled. And then they are simmered for 5 to 10 minutes. When it has boiled, simmer, strain. You can put the whole thing through a blender and then take 500 millilitres as an enema, or you just take the broth. For everything else within this framework of the 14 days, I should really do again and again. Coffee enemas, salt enemas, lemon enemas to help me. So first clean up the entire gastrointestinal tract before you go on with all those supplements, because now you're feeding the parasites first with so much good B vitamin, minerals and so on. And as far as I'm concerned, that's something very, very worthwhile. And I'd appreciate it if you took your venlafaxine out of responsibility of all the things that got quite out of balance there, being allowed and able to live without it. But it's going to need a process which, I think, from the question, it's not what it promised anymore. You can take a giant step forward now. And for that, I wish you from the bottom of my heart that the sun shines, not only on the outside, but also on the inside. And you say, I once had depression for 14 years. With this in mind, thank you all very much for your attention, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Well, I can't see you, but that we meet again. All the best. Thanks.